Well, I've been scrounging around and I came up with a used one on the shelf that's correct, although the spring is kind of fatigued at both ends, so I kind of don't want to use that. The one that came out of this truck, you can see, is all misshapen. This one here, this far one, is for a late model bus, 74 and later. It's definitely too long. This other new one I found on the shelf is actually for a Super Beetle, but the overall length of the tube is correct. Just the shoulder where it rests in the transmission is too far towards the end. So basically I just got to increase the distance on the shoulder a little bit, and I think these washers that were used on the one that took out of here, if I add them in, I think it'll come up correct, which is this tube in the center. This is a proper one. It's just old and fatigued. And it has this rubber bushing thing which goes right in there. So, Bowden tube's in place, no longer clamped, and feels pretty good. So, at this point, I can go ahead and hook up my little wing nut on my cable. Put the cable through. I got to pull the pedal up from the floor and get this wing nut on. When the clutch is new, this wing nut is cranked up quite a ways on these threads, which holds the throwout bearing out further, because when the clutch is new, the pressure plate is pushed in further when it's engaged. As the clutch disc wears, the pressure plate, the pad the throwout bearing rides on, comes further and further out, and so as you wear your clutch, you back this off to compensate for that. But what I've done, I guess we can see, is I pulled my throwout bearing arms a little bit out and shoved a screwdriver in to keep them away from the housing here, because that's where it'll be when I start with a new clutch, and then I can go ahead and tighten the cable easier. Alright, this whole bunch of monkey business started because it just felt like the clutch cable was binding, and I'd found those clamps, and so I welded the tube back. And I think what I had here was a whole bunch of stuff all put together. You can kind of see this throwout bearing arm here is straight. Okay, and if you look closely, you can see the cable is not centered in that hole. In fact, it's touching the outer edge, and as that arm goes forward, the angle is going to be even more severe and rubbed there, and that's why my old Bowden tube was worn right there. What the problem is that somebody has the wrong arm on here. There are a couple varieties, and anyhow, this happens to be the straight one. The one I need is the one that is curved over. It's possible they put this on there because when you have the curved style on there, it's in the way of this bolt right here, this engine mounting bolt. And they may have just put this kind in for convenience because it's easier to get a wrench on there. But now I've got to go out to the pile and dig around and find the correct throw-out bearing arm. So that's what I'm up to at this point, and once I find the correct arm that curves, it'll line that cable up in the center of the hole where it belongs. And I think that'll even cut down a little more on the binding problem. Well, I wish I'd figured this out before I put this transmission in. It would have been much easier. But on the end of that thing, on the end of this shaft here is a slot and snap ring. Got the snap ring off. Now the chore is to get that arm off of that shaft. There are a bunch of slots in the top of the shaft which line up with slots in the arm itself, which is what keeps it from pivoting on there. But it's got a giant spring on here with a lot of preload on it, so it's tough to get this arm off of there. Let's see if I can do this more substantial. There we go. So I've got it unhooked a little bit. Now I should be able to just tap that off of there. Maybe. Almost got it. There it is. You can see how much preload's on that spring there. So at this point I ought to be able to wiggle and jiggle and pry and get that arm off the end of that shaft. We're going to have to try it here and see what's up. Moving ever so slightly. I don't have a puller, I don't think, small enough to grab that. Maybe I do. If I can get behind it, slip up on there, whoop, and center. Come on. Don't want to be on that spring. There we go. Alright, that's fairly centered. It really shouldn't take a whole bunch to get this off of here, but maybe it will. I didn't have a puller to fit, so what I had to do is take the bolt out that holds that bushing for this end of that shaft, take that bolt out so I can slide the whole shaft this way to get this decent sized puller on. I actually cleaned the end up of the throw-out bearing shaft. It was kind of mushroomed out. I think someone had, I don't know, I think they pounded this thing back on or something. I don't know why. But anyway, I cleaned it up, but I still couldn't get it off, so I'm going to use this big puller to get it off. And then I'm going to have to take this whole assembly apart and make sure that bushing's fine and blah 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 blah. But first thing, I have to get that arm off of that throw-out bearing shaft. Fought me every step of the way, but got that arm off of there. And the bushing itself in here feels real good. So I'm not going to tear all that apart. That's still alright. There's a rubber piece here and a snap ring. And the snap ring goes up against here in a slot. But I'm going to pack all that with grease, put these rubber seals back in before I reassemble. We can kind of see the height from the center of the hole, the shaft, to where the cable rides through, and they're the same. But the difference is this. And this curve here will move that cable in towards the center of the transmission a little bit and line it up in that Bowden tube the way it's supposed to be. Falls apart. I've got this, I don't know if we can see it, kind of blue grease. It's multi-purpose marine grease. That's what I use on nuts and bolts and stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and take a glob of it and get it in behind down inside this bushing here. Maybe a couple globs. Pretty substantial amount. And then when I push this thing in there, it'll probably squeeze itself out. So that's good and lubed up on that end. And then I'm going to do the same on this end. Fill this guy up pretty good and run this seal back in. Put my snap ring back in place. And then I have another one of these seals that goes on the outside. Every step of the way it fights me. Turns out the little snap ring that holds the shaft in position there is bagged out, and the only way to put any snap ring on is to take this arm out of the assembly. So I had to pound this bushing back out, which is going to destroy it. It would not go that direction. It was too tight and a lot longer to push. And so anyway, so I had to pound it in here. I'm going to have to cut it off of there just to replace this snap ring that's right in here. But that's where I'm at, so I don't know if I have a new bushing or not, or whether or not I can take the whole arm and everything out of the other transmission and use it here, and then put all new stuff back in that one when it's time. Well, I come up with this pile of stuff. Some new bushings, a different variety, but for a clutch assembly like this, a throwout bearing assembly. A couple springs, this and that, and the bits and pieces off the ones that I took apart. And somewhere I knew I had a heavy duty style, just stashed somewhere anyway. I found it, finally. And you can see it's a lot heavier arms, and they wrap all the way around there. It's a better animal. I may put it in this truck, although I'm not going to be running a great big engine and a heavy clutch, so I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do yet. But what I do know is that it's getting late, and I'm through with it for today. So I guess I'll just say thanks for watching.